So if you're still with me, I hope you're finding this section relatively interesting. All right. Here in this video, I'm just going to share with you an honest story about something that happened to me at one point in the past. Because what I could do, I could just share with you a definition and the difference between fear and faith and why this is important. But I really want to help you to understand this. So if I tell you a story, I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see things from my perspective and therefore understand what it is that I understand about this interesting little word. Because we've already established up until now that faith is actually the complete opposite of fear. If there was a spectrum, far left, fear's at one side and faith is on the far right. Anyone that ever comes to you in at some point in the future for life coaching, they've got a problem. They know what they really want to do. They've got some goals, some ambitions, some dreams, some aspirations, or whatever. And there's always going to be something that's holding them back. And this something is always going to be fear. Fear of failure, fear of not succeeding, fear of the worst possible outcome, fear of being let down, fear of something, and what these things would mean about them as human beings, because they're fundamentally not secure in who they are. Faith, on the other hand, is a doing word, as I've already mentioned. Faith. The reason I'm producing this course right now, I'm doing so in faith. I've said some swear words. I've said some quite controversial things. In faith, that some people are going to be able to overlook some of my little controversialities and fundamentally grasp the lessons and the principles that I'm teaching, to therefore then go out there and practice all of this stuff on other people. So, going back quite a number of years ago, I was living in Australia, in Perth, in Western Australia, and I was going through this phase of life. I was quite lonely at the time. I didn't really have any friends. In fact, I didn't know anyone. I'd recently come out of a quite a long-term, very destructive relationship. All right, and I was heartbroken. I was lonely. I was sad. But I had my 3.6 litre ute, and I was driving up the west coast of Australia, doing a little bit of backpacking, and I'd met a couple of guys on the way. Now, going back then, this was way before social medias came on the scene, so you didn't have Facebook to get people's names and all the backstories. All we had was a couple of nicknames that we had for each other. And if you've ever gone backpacking around Australia or traveling, you'll know that people come and then people go. You might meet someone, they're there for a few days, and then they're gone, and you never hear from them or see them ever again. And it was, I know that's different now because social medias exist, but back then, you'd meet someone, you might spend a day or two with them, and then you'd move on. Now I say this to you because this is kind of what happened to me. I'd met another 3 guys, and for 2 days we travelled up the west coast of Australia from Fremantle up to a place called Coral Bay. Now, this place, Coral Bay, one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited in my entire life. There was a full beach just made of shells, these tiny little shells, and you had silver sands, beaches, crystal clear blue seas, the food, just plus Australian culture. It's just phenomenal. It's so laid back and so warming, if that makes sense. Well, I'd met these guys, and on the night that we got there, we'd had a bit of a campfire on the beach, and we'd had some beers and some music. And when we woke up the next morning, I was a little bit hungover, as were the other guys. Apart from one, because one of the guys we'd met was a Maori, a South Pacific Islander, and he had a bit of an idea for us for that day. And this was to get a boat and go right out to sea. Now, he'd been walking first thing in the morning, and he'd met a local fisherman who suggested that there's a really cool spot just a mile or so out, where the giant sea turtles had some young. Now, this was something that even the tourists wouldn't get to see. Preservation rights and all that sort of thing. So this Maori guy had managed to get his hands on this glass-bottomed boat. So when he came into the hostel in which we were staying, he said, "Wake up, guys, wake up! And I've got a boat. Let's go out to see the sea turtles." It was first thing in the morning, and to be honest with you, I was still half drunk. So we packed up our snorkels, our fins, loads of drinking water, a packet of headache tablets, and off we went. So we got in the boat, went out to sea, and after we'd reached kind of the edge of this reef line, we put an anchor down so the boat was stationary, and then we swam out to see the giant sea turtles. Now back then, again, this was before all the smartphones and digital cameras really got good, and I just had this old disposable underwater camera that takes terrible shots, and you've got no idea whether the shots you're taking are actually going to come out good or not. So you just kind of pointing and hoping for the best. So I was taking photographs of all the Nemo fish and the dories and all that sort of thing, when this big, dark, shadowy mass just swam right underneath me. Boom, 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 boom. And it was a bull shark. I couldn't believe it. Now I had done a little bit of research because Google was about back then, and I did know how to do a Google search, so I wasn't that dated. So the bull shark, with this kind of rounded, flat, rounded face, had a reputation for literally just ripping apart its prey with its razor-sharp teeth, and my bum was like this. Bum, 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 5 pence, 50 pence, 5 pence, 50 pence. I was absolutely petrified. I didn't know what to do. I had an option now because the other three guys, they were just a little bit ahead of me in the water. Here we are, right bang in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. All right, swimming off the west coast of Australia. What a bunch of absolute idiots! There are sharks in these waters. So my options were to swim back to the boat, all right, leave the guys, every man for himself, or swim out to warn the guys. So, having been in the army, I understand camaraderie and all that sort of thing, and no one gets left behind. So swimming back and doing my own thing just wasn't an option. So I swam out and caught the guys. And here, as we were now, 4 of us bobbing in the water, the other guys oblivious to what I just seen, and I was kind of panicking, but kind of with this funny, unusual calmness as well. There was panic and fear, but there was also a thing of calmness, knowing that I had no way of controlling what was going to happen next. Here I was, a little man bobbing in the middle of the ocean. All right, not my terrain. All right. Us human beings, we have land to walk on. The sea's not ours to play with. All right. So here we were now, and the guy said, "So Ken, what's the problem?" And I said, "Oh, look down! I saw a shark. I saw a shark." And then the Aussie guy that was with us from the east coast of Australia, he just went under the water. And now we're all bobbing away. And then he came back up and he wiped his goggles and he said, "Look down." And there was 2 bull sharks now circling us, way down, and it kind of just seemed surreal. Didn't quite seem real. Kind of like we were watching a movie or something like that. You see this sort of thing in the movies, and I just didn't know what to do. I said, "Has anyone got an idea? Has anyone got a suggestion?" And then the Maori guy said, "Yes, I think we have options. We have options here." And the rest of us, myself, the Aussie guy, and the German guy who was with us, we were all ears as the Maori went on to say, "Well, option 1 we have, all right, because we'd left the shore, we'd gone out to sea on a boat to see the giant sea turtles, and they were here with their young. Now we were bobbing about here, in between the boat and the giant sea turtles. So the Maori guy said, right, option 1, we swim back to the boat, but we might get eaten by the sharks on the way back to the boat." He said, option 2 is we could swim out to see the giant sea turtles as originally planned, but we might get picked off by the sharks on the way out there. Now myself and the other guys, I think we were just waiting to see if there was any option that didn't involve getting eaten by sharks. So he went on to say, well, option 3 is we swim out to see the giant sea turtles, we see them, but then we swim back to the boat, and on the way back to the boat we get eaten by the sharks. And now I think we all said, "Listen, is there any option that doesn't involve getting eaten by sharks? Come on, we need some hope here." And he said, "Yeah, there is. Option 4 is we swim out, see the giant sea turtles, swim around them, swim back to the boat, get in the boat, then head back to the beach where we'll go to the beach house for a beer." And at this point, deep sea logic just kind of kicked in, and this was the only option that didn't involve getting eaten by sharks. So the Aussie guy said, "Listen, I'm thinking this is probably going to be quite a good time to pray. Now, me, not being a particularly religious man, in fact, not a religious man at all, I didn't know how to pray. I says, "Well, listen, I don't know what to say. Go say something." So he literally just closed his eyes, and we all kind of closed our eyes, bobbing up and down in the water, and he said something along the lines of, "Dear God, myself and the boys have gotten ourselves into a bit of a pickle. Could you please give those big bloody sharks something else to eat, so that they leave us the hell alone? Amen." And myself and the other boys were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, amen." and ironically, our fear that moment changed and became faith, because whilst up until that point we were kind of petrified, we had no control as to whether we lived or died. The minute we prayed that prayer, our hope now was lodged and focused on the best possible outcome. That we were going to execute this plan, swim out, see the giant sea turtles, make it back to the boat, and get back to the beach, all alive, all in one piece. So our focus had changed from away from the worst case scenario and onto the best case scenario. And what happened on our insides also completely changed. Now, I'm not saying this was the wisest of options. All right, we were four young and daft guys, but I guess we fundamentally all realised that, that day, the only thing that we're actually able to control in life is how it is that we choose to react or respond to the situations and the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Whether we were eaten alive that day, whether we lived or whether we died, was not going to be determined by us. We were not able to control that, and this did give us this ironic sense of peace. And it took me a couple of years to understand this whole experience, but it's one that's absolutely radically changed my life. So what happened was, we swam out. We saw the giant sea turtles. We swam around the back, and then we all made it back to the boat. All four of us got in the boat, and then we turned on the outboard motor and we started heading back to the shore, to the beach. And just to be honest here, right, just to be clear, there wasn't much conversation going on in the boat. We were all pretty focused on the shoreline, and none of us were looking back. So as we got around about, it's about 20 or 30 meters from the shore, that outboard motor packed in. And if you've ever seen four fully grown men jump out of a boat and swim for dear life, as what we did that day, honestly, we just swam for it. And cut the long story short, we all made it back to the beach that day, and none of us made it to the beach house for a beer, because as soon as we're walking back up the beach, pretty much all four of us collapsed face down on the sand with this exhausting adrenaline come down. Now, I tell you this story, it's not one of these psychological metaphors or anything like that. It's actually a true story. All right, I have made some absolutely ridiculous decisions and choices throughout my lifetime. But even in the context of this ridiculous decision that I made, I was able to put faith before fear. And as I put faith before fear, faith in the best possible outcome opposed to the worst, my whole inside world transformed for the better. Perspective, perception. So, I'm wondering if you could take a few moments to consider times in your past where you have chosen to put faith before fear. And I'm hoping that by now we don't have any religious context applied to this now. Faith in terms of a practical choice, a choice of maturity and character. I do appreciate that it's not. I'm not talking about this in the same way that many other people around the world would talk about it religiously. Leave religion aside. Faith being an action or a choice in expectation of the best case scenario, because it's people, men and women, who act out and step out in faith, that do things and accomplish things and achieve things in life. So take a few moments now and just reflect upon times in the past when you have stepped out in faith. Some of these times things might have worked out for you. Other times things may not have worked out for you. But either way, whether they did or whether they didn't, you learned an interesting or a valuable life lesson regardlessly. So if there's a lesson to be learned from this, write it down, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in the next video.